heavy.
You ready?
Keep passing
Glazing
it.
checklist.
This
Okay,
is it.
have this.
Still want one.
You guys didn't get one?
No, we didn't
No,
get one.
I didn't get one.
These still need to be cut in half, but you can look at them just the same.
Fit is over here.
That's not the same thing.
Why do you have the extra?
Oh.
All right,
What's that?
glaze. What is it? First, let's talk about this. What you have in your hand is bisqueware. It's been fired one time. The bisqueware is not clay anymore. This is not clay. It has been transformed. It is something else. It is not going to turn back into clay if you soak it in water. But greenware, before it was misfired, if you soaked in water, would turn back into clay. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So this clay, like everything, has a temperature you can fire it up to where it'll melt. It'll turn to a solid, turns to a liquid, right? And if you heat that liquid up further, it turns into a what?
Gas.
Okay, good science, you guys. Alright, we're not going to turn things into a gas. We're not going to turn this solid clay into a liquid. We're not going to go that high. But just before it starts to melt into a liquid, we hit what's called the mature temperature of the clay. Mature temperature means that the clay particles are as close together and as dense as they're going to get before they start to melt, okay? So that's the top temperature we're going to. That's the glaze fire temperature. The bisque fire temperature is somewhere almost like halfway to that. Think of it that way. So this clay, is there something exciting happening in there?
No, sorry.
You're running your video, dude. Get to work. All your eyes are up somewhere else. Is this not entertaining?
It's on YouTube.
Bisqueware is porous. So we fired it up. As it gets higher, hotter and hotter, the particles get closer and closer. It's more and more dense. This has still a lot of space in it, in between the particles of clay. So it's like a sponge. Sponges absorb water. This is going to absorb a lot of water. Our glaze is a bunch of stuff suspended in water, and we're going to get the stuff on the pot by putting the liquidy glaze on the pot. So what is the stuff? It's stuff in the glaze. Think of it basically, roughly, simply speaking, there are three types of ingredients in a glaze. There's a flux, there's some clay, and there's some oxides that give it color. So the flux is the stuff that melts into a glassy type coating. The clay is the stuff that keeps the glass from melting too much. It stabilizes it. The oxide is what gives it its color. So if we have pure flux on something, we fired it up, the flux would melt it and run off like a waterfall, right? The clay mixed into that flux stabilizes it, so it's more like, instead of a waterfall, it's more like honey. It moves, but it does it really slow. Does that make sense? Yes. So we bring it up to temperature just until it starts to move, and then we turn it off. And then as it cools, what happens to that liquid then?
It hardens.
It hardens. It turns into a solid. Okay, so you guys get the idea of what we're going to do.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
We glaze, like we would glaze inside of this, right?
Pause that. I'm going to answer that. Hold on. And then at the end, if you still have a question, ask me again, okay? Because it's coming up. So in this bucket is glaze. And if I take my object and I dunk it in the glaze and I glaze the entire surface, I get glaze everywhere. And then I go to the kiln, I open the kiln, I put it on the shelf in the kiln, close the door, turn the kiln on, fire it up to temperature, liquefy that glaze, cool it down, solidify that glaze, open the kiln, what do I now have?
A hard.
Slippery material. Slippery vase.
Corey, what?
A slippery vase.
Slippery vase. Okay, the object is going to be slippery because the glaze made it shiny. When I reach in to grab it and I try to pick it up, what's going to happen?
It's gonna stick.
It's going to stick? What do you mean?
Because,
You're right.
Yeah, because you covered the whole thing.
I covered the whole thing.
And when the glaze got on the bottom, when it became this liquid, it stick to the bottom.
Yes. So, did everybody follow what you just said?
Yeah.
Yes.
The glaze that was here is now permanently bonding the piece to the shelf. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So essentially, your pot and my shelf are now one thing. They used to be two, now they're one. Which is weird, but okay. But they're not going to stay that way. I'm going to get the hammer and the chisel out.
Both.
I'm going to very carefully chisel your piece into many different little pieces, trying not to break my shelf, which costs about $100 a piece. You guys get this?
Which shelf?
So we want to avoid that from happening. So how can we avoid that? What is the main thing we need to make sure we do so that scenario doesn't happen.
Don't glaze the water.
Put wax.
You want to make sure there's no glaze on the bottom, right?
Don't glaze it.
Well, I'm going to get to that. So we want no glaze on the bottom, because that's the part that touches the shelf. And there's several ways to get there. I'm going to think of 3 easy ways to make sure there's no glaze on the bottom. And the first one is,
Don't glaze the bottom.
don't put glaze on the bottom. So when you're glazing, glaze everywhere but the bottom. Okay? Pretty simple. There's no glaze on the bottom, you're okay. What else could you do?
You can wipe it off with a sponge.
Glaze the bottom, then wipe this bottom off with a sponge to get the glaze off the bottom, right? Problem solved. There's 2 ways. You want to hear the cool 3rd way?
Yeah. Please.
We have this. There used to be a label that said wax resist. I need to replace that. But this is called wax resist. It is wax. Can you guess what it does?
It
wax
resists.
is-
It resists. And what does it mean to resist?
To do opposite. To reject something.
To reject something. Raise your hand if you like being rejected.
Juan.
Come back to rejection
I'm just
later.
kidding, Juan.
It repels, it rejects, it resists, it fights off, right? So if I'm the wax and here comes the glaze, I'm gonna resist the glaze. So I'm wax, I'm on the clay, I don't let the glaze get on the clay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, it repels it. All right, so how do we get wax on? Let's talk about that.
Paintbrush.
We're just gonna brush it on. It's liquid, it's in here, it's pretty easy. The reason I asked for volunteers is because these pinch pots have round bottoms, and sometimes it's hard to tell. Here I can tell really easily where the bottom is and where the sides are, right? I can see the definition.
Yes.
Here it's a little, I don't know, where does the bottom end and the side start? So here's a little trick, watch this. Take a pencil, put it on the table, bring your pot up close to it. I'm about 1/4 inch off the table, and that's the rule I want you to follow, 1/4 inch. I want you to wax 1/4 inch up from the bottom of your piece.
So do you glaze in wax or wax in glaze?
Oh,
I'm
what?
gonna wax,
When did you do that?
then glaze. Because if you glaze, then
Yeah, it's
wax,
not gonna work.
yeah, it's still glazing, right? All right. I talked about carrying the slip by the lid, right?
Yeah.
You guys remember
Yeah.
that story?
Don't hold it
Never
like that.
carry the slip by the lid. Same thing with this wax. It's a mess. And one of you, when you're late one of these days, you say, I can't find my tardy pass. I'm going to say, clean the sinks or the threads of the slip jar. It's a gross job. Somebody's going to have to do it. So. Ariel, do you mind if I?
What? Oh.
So I'm not going to do this whole thing, but you get the idea. And you can see the wax absorbing or being absorbed by the clay real fast. The smallest amount of wax is all you need. Can you do too little? If you get it, it's good. Can you do too much? It's not going to hurt anything, it's just going to take forever to dry. Okay? So the less you get on, the faster it'll dry. All right, so the pros of waxing are it's really easy to clean your bottom and clean it perfectly after you glaze. The cons to using wax are that it needs to be done about 24 hours in advance. Hey, Omar. That's it.
For Jerry.
I saw your brother.
Jody. Jody.
She ain't here.
She ain't
She's not
here. She ain't her.
Okay, so let's go down the glazing checklist. What is step one? We're going to read this together. I'm going to have everybody follow along, and I'm going to call on somebody to read each step. So follow along so you know where we are. Tamara, what is step one?
Wipe the dust off of your work with a damp, not wet sponge.
Wipe the dust off of your work with a damp, not wet sponge. Okay. Do you guys see what's happening to the clay as I wipe it?
It's getting moist.
It's getting moist. Where's that water coming from?
The sponge.
Okay. And I don't want a ton of water in the sponge because then a ton of water is going to go into my clay. I want the clay to still absorb a lot of water that's in the glaze, so I don't want too much water in the clay. What glaze am I going to use? Let's see.
White.
Black.
Wait, Mr. Benson, what was the difference from the black ones? The black ones, what's the difference from like the Temoku?
Temuku is a glossy black and the Burkitt's black is a satin black.
Okay.
You'll see when you try it. I'm going to go with the...
Mystery.
Mystery.
Let's start with
There's one that
Burkitt's
says
black.
mystery on it?
Yeah, throw there.
and then
Oh,
we'll go
sweet.
to the mystery. And you might be wondering why it's called mystery.
What is it?
I will solve that mystery for you in just a second.
Ooh.
Okay.
Are we allowed to use this?
I just opened the Burkett's Black. Can you all look inside?
Looks like chocolate.
What's the first question you have?
Censor.
You all have a question right now. That's Burkett's Black.
Yes.
Any questions?
Why is
brown.
it
It's
like a
separate?
slip, then there's no point.
Why is it brown? Why doesn't it look black?
Because when you
It's not
fire
paint.
it turns black.
Exactly. It's got to turn black just like the slips, but it's not black right now. So my point is this. What's in the bucket a lot of times has nothing to do with what it's going to look like after it's fired. This is another black glaze. It's red. Reddish. Kind of stinky, huh? Anyway, this reddish color comes from iron oxide. There's a lot of iron oxide in this that when it's fired creates the black colors.
Wait, isn't it?
Iron oxide, raise your hand if you took chemistry. Chemistry. Picture iron oxide on the table of the elements. What is the notation for
To
iron
the right
oxide?
side.
It's
Iron is Fe.
Fe.
EO oxide. FeO2. Okay. Common name for iron oxide is what?
Sulfur.
Nope.
A total
Good.
different element.
Random guess. What? No.
Really?
Iron oxide, the common name. It's if you take iron and you oxidize it, leave it out in the
Rust.
Rust.
Yeah, I said
It's
it
rust.
first.
That's what iron oxide is. And that's what creates this color right now. So if this gets on your clothes, is it going to come off?
Never.
Never. Okay. Sorry to make you think about chemistry and ceramics, but no. There's a
I
lot
was
of
about to ask that in the beginning, like, doesn't it?
Anyone that has that reddish look is going to stain your clothes like crazy. So I have a lot of clothes at home that have iron oxide stains on them. So I'm telling you, I'm not that good at laundry. Maybe you have a secret I don't. So anyway, moving on. Let's glaze this. Next, so who read that first one? Tamara? Okay, Jerry, why don't you read the next step on the list?
Apply wax resist to areas of your work you do not want to glaze bottom.
Okay, and I just showed you how to do that. So wax resist. But I did say you don't have to use wax resist, right? I can just wipe the bottom like Harvey said. Yeah? Alright, so I'm going to not wax this because you want to see this happen now, not 24 hours from now, right? Okay, next step. Lucy.
Glaze the inside of your work first.
Glaze the inside of your work first. And I'm ready to do that. So let's say...
I'll read the next one.
what if it spills?
It's 3.
I'm going to try not to have it
What if
go.
it spills on the floor? Would it stain?
And you'll have to clean it up. Okay, so I'm going to glaze the inside first. And a step I should write in here that's in the notes, that's another piece of paper I'll give you later that goes in your folder. It's up here. Vigorously stir. When I say vigorously, I mean stir it like crazy.
Bad.
It's actually pretty well mixed right now.
Your fingers are loose. You're stupid.
That's actually pretty well mixed too.
Does it stain?
It's not mixed.
It's gonna get burnt. Ooh, you got burnt. I really wanna.
Dipping your fingers in all of it.
Okay, this one is not that well mixed. This is the fingernail test. See how you can see the skin through the glaze?
Indeed.
Okay, it does. It's kind. Yeah, it's kind of watery. It's
Milk.
not really coating my finger.
Milk.
This is not mixed enough. So I'm going to mix this up, and then I'm going to show you what mixed enough looks like. You guys been to SeaWorld?
Yeah.
Seen the Shamrock
No.
Show?
Yes. I don't like
From the front
SeaWorld.
row.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're in the front
It
row.
sprayed me.
You're gonna get dirty.
Come on, I hope you eat it.
It's gonna stain your clothes. Kidding. Forever.
What the?
Apparently somebody dropped their thing.
seems legit.
It's like. Oh, get stained. Oh, reverse.
Okay. So,
I'm scared.
yeah, you can see the fingernail test on my whole hand now. You want it to coat the finger, but still see the outline of the hand, or of the fingernail, I'm sorry.
What?
I'm going to pause that for a second, I'm going to wash my hands.